We're going.
We're on.
We're on.
Hey.
Seen it? We're live, guys.
We are live. We are live. Thank you for being with us. My name is Chaz Vandemotter.
I'm Dustin Trout.
And this is the Non-Corporate Network. You are watching Fill in the Blank. We just got so excited about the show that we didn't come up with a name yet.
Yeah.
But, you know, maybe you guys can come up with a name for us. Submit your name requests. I like Fill in the Blank now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I think we landed on it.
Fill in the blank. Wow. Well, I'm excited to be here. Thank you guys for being here. This show is all about marketing strategy and talking through what's topical in the world of marketing and business. We're both athletes. I know I was a gymnast growing up, went to ASU, competed. You also, tell them about yourself.
Yeah, played baseball through college and, athletics. And
so we've taken the hustle of what it takes to be an athlete and kind of injected it into our businesses. And, you know, we love sports, though, at the core. And, we love watching ESPN. And it's funny how you can watch the same 4 stories run on ESPN all day in 10 different formats. And so we said, why not kind of gamify the business content that's going out and create like an ESPN-esque type of show that really just showcases business and what's topical right now. So here we are. And we're stoked to be here. So the way that we're working on formatting this is that we've come up with the top 4 stories each day that we want to talk about. And we're going to throw a timer up for 5 minutes, and we'll just kind of discuss these stories. And obviously, we want you guys to submit ideas, or if you guys come across things, DM them to us, and we will kind of work on adding them to the agenda. But I kind of look at this as like a mashup between like First Take and PTI. But I'm stoked to be here and do this.
And keep in mind, as we're going through these topics, we'd love to hear your feedback. I mean, just leave the comments and let's get a community just fighting back and forth on your thoughts and views.
I'm ready to argue. Are you ready to argue?
I'm ready.
Okay, sweet. Well, without further ado, we're going to get into our first subject. What is it? Louis Vuitton, yeah. So Louis Vuitton, obviously we know the COVID stuff's going on. Louis Vuitton's opted to make gowns to help provide relief to hospital workers in France, and a lot of other brands are following suit, doing similar things, trying to be socially responsible. But yeah, I think it's an interesting story. What's your take on what's happening?
I think it's great. What we're going through right now, it's the world needs to come together, and they're kind of pivoting. Maybe not so much their business model. It's still in fashion. I'd say fashion per se, but they're filling a void that's going on right now, where maybe there's an industry or nurses, whatever it may be, that there's a huge need.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the ethos is there, obviously, but, I look at this and I go, you got opportunistic brands, and then you got brands that are actually trying to be responsible. And, when I'm finding out about these things from a headline in Forbes, that kind of cheapens what they're doing, right? I mean, it's all about perceptual branding and trying to establish more ethos with your customers. And so I kind of see through some of this stuff. Like, it's one thing to be donating money and helping out, but it's another thing to put your entire PR staff behind your efforts to be socially responsible. So, I'm kind of fired up about it. Have you seen the other examples of brands that are doing similar things? I know I've seen a couple of examples as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the clients that we're helping out, State 48, they're doing something where instead of selling the mask, they've branded their own mask, but they're doing a value add where they're giving one with every purchase. And again, maybe not so much for the headlines, but finding a need in the market and kind of doing value add for it, which I think is huge. And from the feedback that they've gotten from their community, I mean, it's taken off.
Right. Well, I mean, and I kind of look back at this and I think about like New Balance is making masks, and there's a couple of other cool examples, but like I'm wondering how much these are going to be worth, like Hypebeast style. Like, are these things going to start popping up on like eBay and StockX as like Louis Vuitton hospital gown? But like, I don't know. I think the brand ethos is there. It was interesting. I'm a Patriots hater, but I thought it was interesting what the Patriots did. Again, they're getting a headline behind it. They spent $3 million on a couple of containers full of masks, and They actually paid $400,000 more for the masks than they paid for their 1,000-yard rushing running back last season. And so, like, when you look at that, it's like, okay, you guys are putting money where your mouth is. I wonder how much money or cost that is incurred by some of these efforts that brands like Louis Vuitton, you make a couple of gowns for PR for a day. Are they really doubling down on this strategy? I'm curious because I'm not sure that it almost seems more opportunistic and let's make some content around this than it does, hey, we're really kind of putting our money where our mouth is and helping out.
Yeah, but like I said, there's a need, and that's all business is. There's a need, they're helping fill it, supply and demand, and so I think it's a good move.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool with like I saw a couple of breweries that were making or distilleries that were making hand sanitizer in like kegs and things. Mm-hmm. I think stuff like that's kind of cool. And obviously like donating it makes it that much cooler. I know they're donating these kegs to hospitals and things. So, I'm not necessarily 100% bashing them. I think that there's a good thought behind it. But at the end of the day, for me, like if the first time I'm hearing about it is coming from your mouth, it's like, I get that you guys are going to go out there and say, hey, we're doing a lot of service and helping a lot of people out. Maybe thinking about how you can have a different messenger put that story out, or have the hospital workers, maybe creating content around how they're thankful for it. And they're saying, oh my gosh, thank you for these gowns. This helped us. We didn't have any more. I think maybe something like that where you're a little more creative about the storytelling to where it's not me. It's more like, here's the impact of what we're doing and not, here's the activity that we're doing. Look at us. We're so great.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. I mean, it's not so much that they're doing it. I think what you're looking at is how they're approaching it. And again, you could offer the same thing 10 different ways, but it's how you're approaching it and giving it to the market. One thing that'll be interesting, like you brought up the kegs and breweries and all that, is how much productization will happen through this, where people are going to just be making more branded stuff that isn't just going to be a pen or something cheesy. Right. But I mean, I think people will see that, hey, maybe we can help build a brand on products and create a whole new revenue stream even after this.
Oh, it pushes innovation 100%. It pushes innovation. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I'm with it.
Cool. Well, that brings us to the next.
Okay, there's the bell. We're figuring out our sound effect for the in between still. Okay. Next topic. I think that's all you.
Cool. CCPA. California introduced a law that protects consumers from brands essentially selling their data whenever they visit online. I think it's a bunch of bull because the internet is free. I mean, you're not having to pay to go visit Yahoo or Facebook. And companies have to make money to run their websites and whatever it may be. So I think unless someone is willing to want to pay to consume that content, then I think the data collection and selling the data is great. And I might be biased because as marketers, we use that data to then serve ads and drive sales. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts on all that?
Chaz Vandemeyer, the voice of the people here. I do not want people taking my data. I know, I hear all the time, oh, everybody's data is out there. We saw what happened with Cambridge Analytica. Mm-hmm. We saw what happened. That was, if you're not familiar with Cambridge Analytica, essentially multiple elections worldwide were swung based off of data that was stolen kind of under the nose of consumers. Data is worth more than oil. It is the world's most valuable natural resource. And I know that we don't really think about it that way, but your data is an asset to you. And for me, if you're not informing me that you're just going to monetize my data, like they're making sevenfold way more money off of what I would be paying than what I should be entitled to as somebody that has my own data, right? Like if I could pay $5 for Google, but I'm making $50 extra, like it makes more sense for me. So, again, voice of the people, I'm not about it. Don't steal my data. Tell me about if you're going to take it.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you start getting emails from all these different platforms saying, hey, it's going to be $10 here, $5 here, all of a sudden you're paying $3,000 a month to access the internet. I mean, people don't want to do that. And so, I mean, you have to, it's give and take. I mean,
right.
if people don't want to pay, then.
The brands are going to, and it's already come out. I mean, I was reading a New York Times article, and they were talking about how the brands are actually kind of reacting to this in different ways. So the law itself is actually stating that a new right that people in California have is to their own data. And so, like, Microsoft, for instance, has come out and said, everybody on our platforms is entitled to own their own data, and we're going to take it past California. We're going to say nationwide you own your data. And I think that stance is interesting, but, when you interpret the law differently, companies like Indeed, I believe, is coming out and saying, fine, if you don't want to let us use your data to find you a job, then you're off our platform and you can pay for it. And so I think the stance and the interpretation of it, just like the Constitution, I mean, everyone's going to interpret it a different way. And so, I think that making the law is one thing, but the interpretation is going to kind of set the tone to the actual repercussions of, what happens next.
And one thing I did want to bring up is there's a lot of questions. How does this law apply to me? And right. I mean, this is for most small businesses. The law is actually, you have to have like 50,000 contact records or be making 50 or 5 million a year or more in revenue. And so it's really geared towards the big business, but we can expect that to probably keep rolling down outside of California. But again, going back to people want ease of use. And so if I want to be able to know exactly how far a location is, you're going to be collecting location data. It's give and take. Again, there's a cost for everything, and
well, they've talked about like a data locker almost, and Facebook is going to set the tone for this. They're the ones that have messed up and kind of gotten this to even be a conversation. Obviously, the ad revenue that's been created by data is really kind of, they're leading the charge here, Facebook, Google, but they're actually kind of, I don't know if you guys have seen this. If you go into your about in your Facebook, you can actually download your own personal data. They have this like data locker. So I think that that's an interesting way to where it's like, at least you know what data they're collecting on you. And I think that kind of visibility and transparency kind of eases my thinking in my mind when I'm going through and using those platforms, because at least I'm aware of what it is that they're taking from me.
Makes sense.
But I mean, again, the Zoom headline came out and it's like, oh, Facebook at it again, right? When we started to trust them again, now Zoom is sharing data with them. Like, so I'm kind of frustrated about the whole kind of conversation.
Yeah, I think unless you're willing to pay to have access and ease of use, then if you're not willing to pay, then it's kind of...
how many people are going to fall off if they're saying, hey, $5 a month to use Facebook? It's like, that's the whole thing, is the accessibility.
Exactly. So when a platform is free, you are the product. And that's what you just have to realize. And unless you want to, like I said, pay for it, then you got to kind of deal with it.
Fair enough.
Cool. Ad spend. I mean, with everything going on, there's been a lot of brands just pulling back on their ad spend, from Facebook ads to traditional TV. I personally think that now is the time to lean into it, because with people pulling back, I mean, all these ad platforms are auction-based, and so the cost to reach people is going down. Plus, with so much negativity in headlines, it's easy to position your brand in a positive light. And so now is the time to just lean in, spend if you have the cash, and reach people. What are your thoughts?
I mean, people aren't spending money right now, and I mean, even with this kind of influx of the $1,200 bailout money, people are holding on to their money. People are trying to take care of their families. They'd rather spend it on groceries. So I think I think it really depends on the industry that you're in and the customer you're going after. I think from a B2C standpoint, unless you're providing a product that is relevant right now, if you're providing a video conferencing software or some kind of product that you need, like toilet paper, I don't think that it is super wise, because, at the end of the day, if people are staunch on, we're not spending money, we're budgeting, dad lost his job and we're stuck here for another 4 weeks, like there's no doubt, like why would you just take your disposable income and spend it? It doesn't matter how good of an offer it is. I think, from a B2C standpoint, it's going to be very tricky. But, B2B, I think there's still opportunity there. But again, a lot of these industries are being, massively affected. So justifying spending money, is especially on things that you don't need, I think it's a hard line to walk.
And I think everything you're speaking to is all the ads speaking to buy, where now is the time where you can create a little bit of content and build a brand. And that's what people want, is to be either entertained or just know things are going to be good. So instead of coming out and offering products or services to consumers, build a brand, show people your story. And really, I mean, most brands, everyone knows the importance of storytelling. So now get your story out there and use the ad dollars to build your story. When things come back, again, if you're doing digital marketing correctly, you're going to build audiences around people that have watched the videos, have been to landing pages. And when the economy starts coming back, then go in for the sales piece after you built that relationship. It's not so much don't spend. I think you should spend. It's just how you spend it is where the importance is.
Yeah, no, I was reading a story the other day. It was talking about how they were brain scanning people, and they were following the neural pathways of what somebody's going on in their brain when they're talking about like Apple products, for instance. And they're using those same neural pathways for that as they do when they talk about their religious beliefs. And so I think that, building a brand, like you mentioned, and telling a story, I think that it can become something that people definitely get invested into and start to really believe in. So I agree with you there. I think, the CPMs are dropped, and maybe it's kind of like the Wild West back in like 2010 when you're advertising on Facebook, you're back to those rates. But yeah, I think telling a story and creating content, things that don't necessarily incur as many costs, I think are probably more strategic for a lot of these industries where you don't have to just call somebody to action right now. Like you can still be building brand ethos like you mentioned. So I think that that's a good point there.
So, I mean, if people are pulling back, I mean, where should they be spending their time and energy? I think content production?
I think content production. I think just engagement in general on a small scale. If you're a small business owner, then, using your time wisely. If you're just sitting there watching Netflix, like get on and talk to the people that follow you on social media. Talk to the people that are interacting with you or that are previous customers. Go and reach out to them, see how they're doing. I think those kind of activities can build a brand in terms of just showing that you care. If you're a bigger business, obviously, like there's a little bit more that you're going to be able to do in terms of cost incurring. But, in terms of advertising, I look at it as something where maybe retargeting is still valuable. If you get somebody to your website, then it's worth spending a little bit to keep staying in front of them.
Yep.
I mean, we know like Facebook's usage has gone up by like 38% over the last 4 weeks. So it's like eyeballs are there.
Yep.
And there's only so much you can do to control the eyeballs in terms of the content you're posting. So I get that advertising can be a strong arm, but again, I'm just not convinced that people are wanting to spend money. So calling people to action, I think, in this time, unless it's around a cause or around something that's free or that they can have access to that's going to help them, I think it's a sunken cost.
Yeah. Well, I guess we agree to disagree. One last piece there is focus on your first-party data. If you have a CRM or a first-party audience, send emails and not sales emails. But if you have a database that's segmented well, you know how to communicate with them. And right now, that would be a good way to talk to your first-party data without the subject line being COVID-19.
Yeah. No, I can get behind that. Our last story, Manscaped, changing the game. So from a perceptual branding perspective, as you guys have probably heard of Manscaped, they've created a word around their brand that has kind of called people to action and created a movement. And it's allowed them to reinvent a product in the form of an electric razor that's been around for 30, 40 years. But they raise the price on it, tell a good story, and all of a sudden now they're a billion-dollar-plus company off of a $10 razor. I mean, it costs them probably 30 cents to make these things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's phenomenal what they've done, and I wanted to showcase them today for sure.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you can take your brand, and that is the norm of what you call it, similar to Band-Aid and Kleenex, I mean, you're going to win. And it all comes down to how you're telling your story, how you're positioning yourself. And they did a good job at identifying who their audience is, narrowing down on that, and really reaching them on a personal basis.
And their sales haven't really curbed with this whole kind of pandemic thing going on. I mean, I think that from my end, from a marketing perspective, the influencing that they've done, they really kind of took this approach of like, we're going to educate men that women don't like super hairy dude, and they're using these like Instagram models to come out and kind of create this whole kind of ethos around, ew, if you have body hair, like, but it's something that, it's conditioned people into actually adding that as a consideration throughout their day and thinking about their hygiene more. It's notoriously a girl thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they saw an opportunity to go, men aren't really taking control of their personal hygiene. And I think that the influencing that they've done with the social media stuff, I think is phenomenal.
Well, going back to the girls that they've been using, I mean, they did a good job at identifying their audience and what really drives their decision making. I mean, it's
yeah, right.
Most dudes are going to be mindful of how that significant other, that female, is really thinking of them, and so leveraged that audience to really speak to who they're trying to sell to, rather than, hey, groom yourself, here's a razor type of thing. It's who's the person that's going to come in to impact them to make that decision, and they've done a great job at that.
Well, and I think that the other cool thing, too, and when you're thinking about as a business, especially if you're selling a good or as opposed to a service, you have to be able to drive expansion off your existing customers. You have to get them to come back in some way. And if it's a razor, then you're only going to need one. You don't need to go and keep buying razors over and over again, like for an electric razor. But they've created like a line of products that is almost created like a SaaS business around in terms of the subscriptions that you can get for the different body butters and lotions and things. I mean, it's very reminiscent of like Dollar Shave Club and how it just popped off, But I think the virality of something like this, when you can get around a cause and really kind of knock the domino over in terms of like people's decision making and how they view things, and really create kind of a habit that you can drive expansion revenue off of existing customers for sure.
Yeah, I mean, what caused them to kind of really take off?
I think that, and we look at it
was
from
more of the influencer marketing.
Look at it from a virality standpoint, I think, and I think that having that catchy like Manscaped, people are familiar with that word, and it means a little bit different to every person. But kind of the way that Kleenex created, a word around their brand that is now universal, they've kind of done the same thing. But the virality, I think it was really that shock and awe factor in having kind of a more approachable brand voice in terms of the advertising they were creating. I think it did a good job of kind of making it accessible and drawing people in. It's kind of like Barstool-esque type of style. And I think that they're able to kind of borrow brand equity from these other businesses like Dollar Shave Club and Barstool that have been successful in kind of rallying men, if you will, on like social media. So I think that virality and the strategy they came up with in their voice is critical to their success.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned Dollar Shave Club and everything like that. I think the commonality between all of them is they really identified their audience and were creative in speaking to them. Not being too vanilla and trying to reach everyone, every man out there, but a little age demographic or whatever it may be, and who they are, and just doing a good job at building the brand and telling their story around them, which kind of touches on a little bit of everything we talked about. I mean, collected data, they have a great email sequence whenever you opt in. So they just do a good job at knowing who they are, who their audience is, and really telling a story that gets them to make that purchase.
Yeah, no, I mean, they stay in front of them, and I can't advocate for them more. I think that what they've done is phenomenal. So I think we're on the same page on something.
Wow.
Boom, right on time.
On time. Well,
here we are. We figured it out. This is one of many. Thank you guys for being here. Are we calling this thing? We know it's a non-corporate network, NCN. So if you're watching this, welcome to the family, and send in your requests of other content. Anything you want to add to the people?
No, I just appreciate tuning in, and as this kind of grows and gets some legs, we'd love for some feedback. Send us content ideas, whatever headlines you're seeing, any questions that you have, and we'd love to fold some of those topics in and kind of just put a twist on business news. I mean, it's usually
CNBC's boring.
boring.
And we tried to get jobs there, but they're like, your hair's not white enough, and you're only half the age of anyone we would actually employ. So we
and you wear a hat too much.
Yeah, right. My hair's too long. I mean, the list goes on and on. But figured we might as well just do it ourselves. And so we want to have fun here. And so if you guys have ideas, send them in. But thank you for tuning in. Again, I'm Chaz Vandemotter.
Dustin Trout.
Thank you guys for being here. We'll talk to you soon.
Later.